Okay. So, Ashley, you were a very successful actor. So, talk me through the process of, and I guess like the internal work that was required to go from actor to a founder, because it's a jump.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I feel like, there's definitely like a lot that needs to happen internally for that kind of, I guess, move.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very two different things for sure. I think that I've always had this side of me in me. I am a really creative person. And so I remember like maybe probably 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, telling my husband that, with acting, I love it. I've done it my whole life since I was 3. And it's like my love for it is like I love being on set. I love like, being with your friends every day and like creating families with every like project that you do. But the hardest part is waiting for your next job. And it's different. It's like a different thing that, my husband's a musician. So it's like if he misses music, he can pick up a guitar and play it. With acting, you really can't just like, except for going into acting classes, which is what I did. Because it's like in that time off, it's like you don't get to use something that you have that you're like, oh, I just want to like get to the next project. And I just remember saying to him, like, I really feel like I need to be doing more because I'm creative and I feel like I'm waiting for my next job and it doesn't feel great. And so I think that's when it started to kind of like bubble up. And so I started looking into doing things like blogs, and I was just trying to really express myself in different ways. And then about 5 years ago, I had a like makeup line, and it was with a partner, and I had all these high hopes for this makeup line. And I was like, this is it. I'm going to take this over. I'm going to get an investor. I'm going to create this company. I'm going to be CEO, because social media makes it look so easy to do that.
So glamorized.
It's so glamorized. And it was just like red flags from the start. I should not have done it, but I did get an investment. And so that was like the pressure was on. And it really was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Like I was really by myself. I could not get my team together. I learned like just that year was like business school for me. Like I learned everything about Shopify. I was putting in my own discount codes while I was in makeup for a Netflix show I was doing. Like I was just trying to juggle like way too many things.
And that's like, by the way, like just zooming in on that for a sec, like that's insane, because when you are in year 1 of business, it is like you are grinding yourself to the ground.
Yeah.
And then add in a Netflix. I didn't have time to like have lunch.
I know. I was like, what am I doing? And it was just one of those things like that moment when I was in the makeup chair was a kind of like, it was a breaking moment. It was at that point, it had been a year of me trying to do this. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like everyone around me was like, are you okay? Like this is not, and I had so much anxiety. I also was like, going through, I'd realized I suffered from anxiety and depression. And so it was basically a lot of the stress of taking over that company that caused it to like come to light.
So like, was it when all of this was happening that you were like, wait, like I'm in a really bad headspace? Or had you experienced symptoms of it in the past and then it just kind of like bubbled up and really manifested as you were going through this time?
I think I've always have had anxiety, and it has manifested in different ways. Like I would have panic attacks before a performance, or like little anxiety attacks, but like didn't know that that's what I was suffering from, because no one around me like on my team was like, hey, you are dealing with anxiety and this is a panic attack. Like people were like saying I was hyperventilating and I was just needing to breathe. And so I really had no idea what I was suffering from. But I think the pressure of taking over a company and getting an investment was the stress of that just kind of like put me in another zone. And so that was when it really affected me. And I knew I was dealing with something that I needed to figure out. I thought there was like something going on like health wise. So I was like getting an MRI and like seeing all these doctors, and everybody was like, this is just anxiety. And I was like, no, there's something wrong. There's like this feeling inside me. And anyway, so it turned out to be anxiety. And I realized that I was having insomnia. It was the worst thing ever. And I realized I was just failing miserably at what I was trying to do. And so I knew I had to shut it down because it was just like, at this point, I was now on a Netflix show and I was going into a CBS show like right away. So I was like, there's just no way, I have to shut this down. And so I did. But it's really amazing how just like in that moment, I was like, that's it. Like, I'm done with products. Like, I'm never doing this again. And my big goal was to have that product in Target. And I just felt like that was like, oh, that was just a dream that just died in that moment. And it's really wild how that whole situation prepped me for what I'm doing now. Like, honestly, I met with like all these like Western and Eastern practitioners, and they taught me how living a cleaner lifestyle was better for my mental health. They taught me so many different things. And so Frenshe, my blog, was basically me being re-inspired to be creative and to not do products. It was really like the after effect of that whole situation, being like, well, I just learned so much. And it was all through mental health. And so maybe I should start a blog that I could tell my experiences, you know, through all of these different, you know, even just plastic surgery and like the negatives of that, and just everything that I hadn't really shared with everyone, because
And also, I think having control of that narrative yourself.
Yeah.
Because, like, as I think someone who's a public figure, like, if you go and talk about something, you know, to the media, like, who knows, like, if someone just pulls a line out of context.
And just like clickbait.
Yeah.
I know. That is always the fear, is like, it's a line that you balance. And even with social media, I was really good at being like showing people my life, but not too much of my life, because I like to be private still. And Frenshe was really the first time I was going to be like really open and vulnerable. And so it took me a couple years. Like, I remember hiking a lot with my husband and being like, I have this idea and I want to share my experiences with people, and I want to share like what I've been through. And so I think it took that much time for me to start to be like, okay, I'm going to be like really open and I'm going to be vulnerable and share all these things. And so it was really, really amazing that Frenshe was just like me wanting to connect with people based off my experience of like what I had just gone through, especially with my mental health. And then Being Frenshe came out of that. And it was like, how wild was it that my journey, to see me go through something that was really hard and difficult and like something I failed at, and then to see what exactly that something's actually even more authentic to who I am, and have that actually in Target. And so it was just like wild and so full circle and so beautiful, and you know, but obviously hard work at the same time.
So, you know, you talking about the fact that you failed at something and then you kind of like picked yourself back up and started something again. I think that number one, when it takes a lot of courage to realize that this isn't working and it's okay to shut this down and figure out how I'm going to pivot. What was your thought process there? And also, what advice would you give to other young, like, you know, first-time founders who are maybe like, you know, failing at something, and like what tips would you give them there?
I would say that, you know, my thought process was, I remember Googling like celebrities who have failed at something, because I was so scared to openly shut something down and be like, this didn't work out. I had a lot of pressure just being a public figure, and you know, all these kind of like makeup lines had taken off, and I was just like, dang, I didn't do it. So my thought process was like, I cried, and I was pretty bummed, and I really was just like, I had to choose myself and my health, to be honest, over just you just know when something's not right. Like when those red flags, and like it felt like every single time I tried something, I was hitting a wall. So it's like you just know when something is just like energetically not meant for you.
What were the early red flags that you noticed? Or like when you kind of like look back, were there things that you're like, damn, like if I'd known that today, then like maybe I wouldn't proceed further?
Yeah, I would say probably when I was going to get an investment, I was like, oh, okay, well, if, you know, at first it was like, obviously a lot of people were interested. And so I was just like, okay, this is great. But then when it started to get into like the real nitty gritty, it was like there was one investor, and I was like, that's, you know, that's weird. And I don't know if that's like, you know, if that's a good sign. Like there should be hopefully like a couple people that are like excited. And I would say that like probably redoing my deck 25 times was a good indication that like, yes, you're going to obviously redo your pitch deck all the time. But there is like when you meet with so many different people and it feels like it's like just a small percentage is excited, it feels like a little bit like, okay, there should be, I had just had no one guiding me. And that was another thing. It's like, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone helping me like guide the ship. It was like me just out on my own. And I think like me trying to put a team together and not having that come through, those are like early signs, like maybe this is not the right thing to do. But I had already bought, you know, my like trademark. So I was like really wanting to like go for it. And I think that in those moments, it is just, you know, when you know, and you've tried so hard for a year, you're like, this is not right. Like if I'm the only one doing the Shopify discount codes, you're like, this is probably not going to do any good and it's not going to get better from here. So I think it's just in those moments, you just have to recognize it and you have to like accept it and you just have to know to move on. And I don't think I was like, okay, I'm going to move on and start something new. Like I was really down. I was like, I'm never touching products again. Like I'm not selling anything anymore. Like this is the worst thing. But I think that it really is just how you get back up and to be creative in another area of like, you know, for me, the blog was just like really nice because there was no pressure. It was like not selling products. It was really just about connecting with people. And I think that is something that, you know, it just like you can be creative in that. And that just like obviously catapulted me to the next thing, which was creating a product line. And obviously I was so scared before it came out and I had fear and I was like, you know, just scared of like obviously what I'd been through. But you just have to let go, I think. The biggest thing is letting go.
You know, there's that saying, what is it, that like failure is redirection sometimes. And I feel like this is such a good example of that.
Yeah.
And I think that when people are down, right, and they feel like, oh, like I'm just like, this is just not working out the way that it's meant to, I don't even think, like, I think a lot of the times it's a numbers game. You know what I mean? So it's like, how many times are you going to get back up after having had something go wrong? Like, that's true grit to me, you know? And like, I think something that I've noticed about founders and successful founders over and over again isn't that they hit the idea the first time. You know, it was that they had the grit to keep at it over and over again and like the courage to get back up whenever they like fall down, because everyone fails, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And I also think something that was really interesting was it's kind of like when I met my husband, I was like, oh my gosh, like you've been told that in relationships, it's like super hard work. And so I remember being with like exes being like, this is really difficult, but this is what they say. And it's like, it really shouldn't be that difficult. Like there's going to be like hard times, but it shouldn't be that difficult. And I think that the experience of being Frenshe, even like right before we were like pitching Target, it was like such a flow that was like, oh,
it was right.
It's right. And it had so many signs that this was like the correct path to be on. And I think that when it's like, yes, it's hard work and yes, it's exhausting and being a founder is not the easiest thing in the entire world, but there should be a flow that you're like, oh, okay, this is different, you know?
I think the flow should be one where you have full conviction that this is going to work. And that, like, you know, you have other people who also believe in the idea, but like, I don't know, like you have this like very clear idea and like the flow kind of takes you there, you know? Where like, of course, like every single day there's things that go wrong, but that's just how it is, you know? But like nothing major that'll like shake.
Nothing is like where you're hitting a wall, like how I experienced. And that's what I did know what was so different about this when I was starting it. And I was like, had some feelings being like, I think this is going to be different because it just was like, it just felt better. And it was just also, I remember having a moment, I was like in the shower and I was like, dang, like, I feel like my life has really just like gotten me ready for this moment because like candles have been such a huge part of my life for years. Candles like are like, I mean, I've always, I think I didn't realize for my mental health, but like lighting a candle and opening a window and doors, like I love that on like a weekend. It feels so nice. And it's just like my whole line is based off of fragrance. And so it's just like, and all of the fragrances are inspired by my candles. So it was just like, wow, like my life was guiding me to this moment. And so you just like know when you're on the right path and doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think when it's like it's aligned. And
Yeah.
it just makes sense. I feel like it's like a little bit easier when that's the
yeah.
case. Talk to me about, you like after, all of this had happened with the old beauty brand, then you started your blog and then you started product again with Being Frenshe. What was that process like? Like, were you nervous going into it? And what made you even decide to go from the blog to product again?
I think it was just connecting with my audience, and obviously we're all home at the time. And so, for me, I'm not used to being home, and someone with anxiety does not like to just be in one place all the time. So I had to create rituals for myself in those moments to kind of feel really present and grounded, like being home. And so I think it was just like, okay, sharing with like, my audience who, when I opened up and talked about like my mental health, it was just like it was just an amazing kind of support system. And a lot of people would share, what they have gone through on DMs with me. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's why I wanted to be open about, struggling with mental health, was like, I felt I wanted people to feel less alone. And so it was so beautiful to just see people like connecting with me on that. And I think I just realized that, what my rituals were, I could maybe like help others. And I was like, oh, I can't no longer like kind of go out to make myself feel better. I can't go to a spa because like we're home. I can't do these things that make me feel relaxed. So I had to really do that at home and create those kind of spa-like experiences. And I love baths. And aromatherapy is like one of my favorites as well. So it's just kind of like those were the first, ideas. And obviously me lighting candles and the whole like, I knew if I had a bad sleep, like the energy just changes when you open a window. And so those were the first kind of ideas. And when I was doing the product line, it was really just, wanting to create like a full body care line to think about ourselves. I feel like for me, I'm someone who like, I love the idea, especially like being a busy mom or, just even for like a student that's like really stressed out, the fact that this line like makes you think about yourself and to take a moment for yourself and breathe in is just something that's really beautiful. So I wanted to create something that's like, let's not forget about, like even just like certain body parts, like I feel I'm someone who after I had the baby, like I stopped moisturizing my stomach as much because, you do it because you're like, I don't want stretch marks. But then it was such a beautiful ritual that I would do when I was pregnant. And I was like, I should be giving love to like my stomach. Like, yes, it's not perfect anymore, but that's okay. And like, it's really Being Frenshe is just like whether you want like a 5-minute mood boost because it has mood boosting scent technology in it, or if you want like a 30-minute like full on spa bath. Like the whole idea is that we've taken this mood boosting scent technology and put it into your everyday products. So you no longer have to like grab for something extra, like it's built into your everyday products.
I love that. It's it's a very strong through line.
Yeah.
Something that you said about building your blog was the fact that you really wanted to connect to your community. And something that you said earlier on, like right when we started, was the fact that when you were on set, something you really liked was connecting with other people in that element.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, being at home, like during the pandemic where you weren't kind of working as an actor and like you were missing that element, do you feel like having a blog kind of filled that for you?
Well, yeah, I think that it was just like I think in my life, I was obviously yearning for connection because I'm someone who I can be an introvert and extrovert. Like I love to be like at home with my husband and stuff and my daughter, but then I can also like love to have a good party, like it's like I'm kind of both. And I think that being home, I was just like, dang, like we were not really able to see our friends. And, we were like really quarantined because I did get pregnant. So I was trying to be like really safe. My husband has type 1 diabetes. So we were really kind of like isolated for a while. And I think the blog really was just like, yeah, it was a way to connect with people on things that I'd gone through. I had launched the blog talking about my explant of my implants, and no one even knew I had them. But I had struggled with like this breast implant illness, I think. And so I wanted to describe what those symptoms were. And then a lot of it was, Frenshe was really about self-love and my journey to self-love, you know? And I think that that was something I wanted to share with people. And then I think having people just on Instagram be able to comment and like DM me, it was just, it was a way to connect on a deeper and meaningful level than I've ever done before.
I also think that when someone is a public figure, you kind of have this perception that they're like, I don't know, like that they're not going through like the regular human things that people go through, and like seeing someone open up about that, I don't know, it humanizes you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I think it's like, I think that that's really why, you know, Symptoms, my album I had done when I was struggling the most with the mental health, was a way for me to really share that. And I remember a lot of people weren't talking about having anxiety, like no one talked about it, but I had lost someone to depression, and I just knew. I remember when we were recording too, it was like someone else had passed away from suicide, and I was just like, man, I need to talk about mental health because I struggle with it, and like we just need to talk about it more. Like there was just too much stigma around especially depression. And most likely if you are struggling with anxiety, you do struggle with depression. They coincide with each other. And so I really wanted to share what helped me, and I wanted to make sure people just felt less alone, because it's like when we are alone and thinking that we're the only ones that are suffering from that is when we feel like we can't really reach out. And a lot of the time, the people that are the scariest are the ones that you don't even notice that or know that they're going through it. And so really for me, I was just like, we just need to start talking about this. And now people talk about it all the time, which is so great, because it really has like, I mean, at this point too, what we've all been through, everyone has gone through some sort of anxiety at some point in the last couple of years. So I just am like glad that people are able to talk about it and not feel so kind of, you know, scared to talk about how they might suffer from it. And so, yeah, I feel like for me, it was just something that I'm glad that I'm able to kind of connect with people on, you know.
Were you nervous to open up like this part of your life? Because, you know, I can only imagine that you present a certain way, or like, you know, you're perceived a certain way, and then all of a sudden you come out and you actually like talk about the fact that you're like a human being going through like human shit, you know?
Yeah, I think that I definitely was really nervous. I think that music really saved me and helped me in that, because doing Symptoms, it was, you know, something that I'd learned. I had read this book called Attacking Anxiety and Depression. And it's like an old school book, but it really helped me because each chapter was a symptom I was experiencing. And a makeup artist on set was like, this is what you're struggling with, and you need to try this book. And she was like, it helped me. I used to have panic attacks, and I haven't had one since I was 14. So I was just like, whatever, I got to do. And a lot of that book was saying how, like, let's take the seriousness out of it. Yes, it is serious. And yes, it's like something we struggle with, but like, let's also kind of like not take it so seriously to where we just feel like, I don't know. I think it's more just like trying to have a little bit more fun with it and feel like this is what we have. Like we struggle with this sometimes, you know? And so I felt with Symptoms, it was really a way for me to take all those scary symptoms that I was experiencing and making kind of like light of it in some way. Like insomnia is on there, and insomnia is really about how I can't, you know, sleep because I can't stop thinking about a guy, you know? So I was like, this is like more having fun with like what I have obviously gone through. Because obviously going through it is not fun, and it is serious, but to create something beautiful out of it was really awesome. And so I feel like that really helped me. And I just think that there was pressure of feeling like, okay, people know me as a character, and they, you know, what if I let people down when I share this? But I think at that point, you know, I'm a really strong person. And I think at that point I was like, I have to. Like I just had this thing in me that was like, I have to talk about this. It just mattered too much. And so I was scared, but I was like ready to talk about it. It does take me a process, I think. You know, for me, I'm like I said, I am private.
Yeah.
And there's things about my life that people, you know, will not ever know. Mm-hmm. But it takes me, some time to where I'm like, okay, now I can speak about this moment. Like, I'll never speak about it on Instagram as I'm going through it.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to process what you're going through in order to come out the other side
Yeah.
and be like, okay, like this is what I went through, you know? Like
Yeah.
I just think that that's kind of part of it.
Yeah. And I've always really believed, like, growing up in the business, I just always knew, like, when people would ask me questions like, oh, who is your idol? And I'm like, I don't have one. Or like, who's your icon? And it's like, I really like, for me, I look up to like my mom, or I always knew like we are all human, that's the thing. It's like, it's hard because sometimes we put people, especially celebrities, on a pedestal and be like, they're like so perfect. And then when we find out they're human, we're like, dang, but we are all human. And so I kind of always knew that. And so I think that, it's nice for people to, I don't know, to me, I'm like, I feel that when I learned this kind of more darker, I call it kind of like, it is a darker aspect of me, but I think that is like the stuff that makes us beautiful. Because being kind of like that, what people might have perceived me as, this kind of positive fairy that's just like, I know I had friends being like, you're just so positive and you're just such a fairy. And it's like, that's just like one tone. Like,
Oh, yeah.
learning about all these different things about us, I think, is like what makes us beautiful. Yeah.
I agree. Talk to me about navigating motherhood. Like, what was that like? Because I feel like as you're describing like the last few years, what's happened?
Yes, for sure. It's a lot, to be honest. It's not the easiest thing ever. No one prepares you for it, that's for sure. It's amazing. Like, I'm obsessed with my daughter, but it is really hard sometimes because it is just, especially as women, like we go through so much, like having, being pregnant and then, the hormones like leveling out. Like, it took me 2 years for my hormones to go back to normal. So like, I think I definitely dealt with postpartum depression and had no idea. I mean, I definitely had anxiety, so I knew I was going through stuff hormonally, but it was just, it's beautiful and the hardest thing at the same time. It's what they always say. It's like the best thing, but also just one of the hardest things I've ever done because it's hard.
How do you balance a kid with a business? Because I'm like, Ray is my child right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how I throw a child into the mix.
Well,
right
I had basically like 2 babies at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, I was pregnant,
Twins.
developing the line, and literally launched the line as I had my baby. So it was wild. I would say I still don't know how to balance it. I will constantly have mom guilt, when I'm working. But I think since she started going to school, it's made me feel a little bit better because I'm like, oh, she's with her friends, she's at school. And so when she's at school, I feel like I don't feel guilty at all type of thing with work. But I really just try to include her in everything. If I'm traveling to New York, like I bring her to New York. Like, I am someone who, like, it is really, that has been the hardest part of it, to be honest, is the balance. But it happened. You do it and you figure it out. And there's going to be weeks where I'm like, I am the best mom ever. And then there's going to be weeks where I'm like, man, I've just been working nonstop. And it's like, but my husband is really helpful because he balances that out. So for us, we care about being super present in her life. So obviously we have a nanny, but it's like really for us, like I get to have every morning I'm with her in the morning and I get her ready and like we play and we eat breakfast and then it's like, okay, then I'll go to work and she goes to school. So it really is just like a balancing act, but I don't think you'll ever like really figure it out, but it's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah, it's that's what I hear. What advice would you give to yourself in first 6 months of motherhood? Like if you could go back in time, like having gone through everything you've gone through.
I would probably just say, be patient with yourself. There's just like a lot that you go through. And especially when you're a new mom, you're just like you're hoping that you're doing everything right. But then on top of like that, you're dealing with your hormones. And I think that you really just need to be patient with yourself and know that, you're doing a great job. And I think that was like, for me, I always was like, oh my God, am I doing good at this? Like, am I good at this? Maybe I'm not good at this. And it was just like, no, it's just like, you just know, and you have it in you. And To be honest, like being pregnant, one of the things that changed about me was that I think before I would be kind of indecisive or like really second guess my opinion on stuff. And I just became like, there was something that really like, I was like, no, this is the right decision. And like, I became very confident in my decisions. And I think that is something that I'm so grateful that Jupiter brought to me, is that like, I don't know, like I love having like being pregnant with her. I was like, gosh, like I was started to have an interior design side of me come out that I've never really like, seen before. And so I just think she just makes everything so much more fun and better. And I love sharing like everything that I'm doing with her. So it's just gives you so much, I don't know, meaning to life, I think.
I love that. What has been the most fun or like fun or gratifying experience that you've had as a founder that you've been like, damn, like I went through all of this, but like this is cool,
I mean, I would have to say like the first thing for me was like seeing the product line at Target, because knowing my journey and knowing what had happened to where I thought I would never have a line at Target, and to see the products for the first time, I was like crying, because to me that was it. That was the success. I was like, I don't even care what this does. This is successful right here. Like this, I did it. I freaking did it. But then to see people love it so much, and, to set goals and then to see those goals be reached, you're like, wow, like this is crazy. Like it just has been so awesome. And to see like TikToks where people are like loving the products, like specifically this, product, the magnesium, the body serum stick. It has just been wild how many people, like I have friends that reach out to me. I have friends of friends that reach out being like, we can't get the serum stick at Target. Please tell me when it's coming back out. Like, because it sells out so fast. And I'm like, wow, like it really is just like so many people love this. Like I hear people like don't go to sleep without it. And I'm that way with my products, because I literally created this soothing body serum stick with magnesium because one of the symptoms I had when I was like the most anxious was kind of like it was more of a symptom like inside of shaking. And I have TMJ, but it was like in my neck. And so I would use magnesium spray. But the thing is, magnesium spray burns your hands. So then you have to like get up out of bed and wash your hands. And so with this soothing body serum stick, it has the magnesium in it that you just roll it on. And so I roll it on like my jawline and my neck at night. And so it's like, I love it. But to hear like so many people reaching out and loving it, it just is like such a good feeling. You're like, dang, this is working, and people love it.
It's the best part of being a founder.
Yeah.
Like anytime I see like a message or like someone I know who's like, oh my God, wait, you're the founder of Array? Like if that comes and it's like they didn't make that connection,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, how'd you know Array? Like,
Yeah.
This is so cool.
It's so awesome. It's like, it's really, because you just don't know when you're developing it. You're like, I don't know if anyone's going to use this or like it. And then to just see people like loving it, it's just, it makes it so great. It makes all the crazy hard work,
worth it
for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so I want to take some time to answer a few audience questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what is the most challenging part of your new career in interior design?
I would say that one would probably be just working with clients. It is definitely difficult because for me with interior design, I'm so used to doing it for myself and not really having like another person to kind of approve things by. And when you're working with clients, like they have their specific vision and you have your vision, and you're trying to marry the two visions. And I also treat the house like its own vision. So I'm someone who like will interior design to a house, because there's something about it when I walk into homes that I'm like, ooh, like this should be this way. And I kind of like have like a style for it. So it is kind of like marrying all those visions together. And I also am not like I'm used to being the boss. And when you're an interior designer and you have a client, you're not the boss. Like they're the boss, So it's like very different to be on that side of things. But it's a really cool like learning experience. It has definitely been something that I've learned a lot, like doing it for others now.
How did it even get, like, how was that idea even spurred on? Like, why interior design?
So, my dad's a contractor, and so I've just grown up around, obviously, like, you know, seeing him do things. But my first home was built from the ground up with my dad, and I worked with interior designers. I've worked with Jake Arnold and Pearson Ward, and I think working with them, I started to realize I've always had a very strong opinion, and so I was like, wow, you know, I kind of wanted to try doing it for myself, because even though I loved working with them, there was something that I was like, man, I wish it had this more, or like, I wish it felt more like me a little bit. And so I started to do like inch my way into it. I did my kitchen renovation with my dad, and was like, here I go, I'm going to try this. And it came out amazing. And I was like, gosh, this is really nice. And so then during the pandemic, someone who had bought a prior house of mine, because I've weirdly flipped homes over the years. I've lived in many homes over the couple of years that we've been, my husband and I were like, my husband's like, please stop moving. But one of the girls was like, I really want to redo the kitchen in this house. I'm like, oh, I would love, like, I always wanted to do this. And she's like, that's exactly what I want to do. And so during the pandemic, as I was developing Being Frenshe, I actually did her kitchen. And so I started to kind of like really start to see that I could do this for others. And it was my dad's client's son that recently got his first house that hired me. And so that's what I've been working on the last, like, I would say like 10 months. But I also weirdly had met through my daughter, I had met a girl who she does interior design. Like, she went to college for it. So it was so perfect that a mom friend of mine would be my assistant. And so we do it together. And so it's really fun.
That's really cute. Okay, next question that I have is, do you have any advice for aspiring interior designers?
Any advice? I mean, I feel like probably I would say, like, I'm a humongous fan of Pinterest. Every interior designer is. And I think that I find so much inspo on Pinterest. And I also feel like advice just, there's so many things that you can touch on with interior design. But I feel like one of the things is just like really trusting yourself. And I think for me, it's been something where, you know, especially working with clients, they have, you know, a hard time sometimes trusting that, you know, how it's going to come out. And I think you always just have to like trust yourself and trust the process, and have your clients trust the process, because it was like, I feel as you're doing it, if you're second guessing yourself, you're going to, like, I think spiral into being like, oh my God, it's not right, when really it was like right from the very beginning, you know? So it's like, trust the ideas that you have. And I think when you see the outcome, you're like, dang, I did a good job.
Love that. What are your tips around mindful parenting?
Tips around mindful parenting. I think it's just really, you know, for me, we really teach Jupiter about taking a breath, you know, when she's feeling any sort of frustration. And it's really awesome because obviously, like, breathing is, like, for anxiety is like so good, and meditation, like, me and my husband are very much into meditation. And so when she's feeling like really frustrated or upset, we're just like, you know, take a breath, count to 3. And it's so cute to see her tell like her cousin that. She's like, it's okay, take a breath. And it's like so cute if her cousin's younger and she's 6 months old and she's crying, she's like, just take a breath, take a breath. And it's really cute to see her give that to others. And so it really is like, I think, you know, you always just really want to acknowledge how they feel, you know, and not put them down for how they feel. I mean, they're experiencing so much for the first time. And so it's important that we acknowledge their feelings.
I really love that, like, that you say that, because I don't know, like, I think sometimes parents are like adults. Like, I remember when I was a kid, you know, like, you'd kind of just like, you felt like you'd be like, it was just like a,
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just kind of like.
Well, my parents never taught me about my feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we do teach Jupiter, is like, we have a book and it's like basically the monster parade, and there's like the angry monster, the sad monster, the anxious, fearful monster, and it's like really good because then she learns. And even Inside Out, that movie, we've had her watch that, and she like understands joy and she understands like, you know, anger. And so when she feels frustrated, she knows it's just a feeling that can pass. She just needs to breathe through it. And I think that's important for us to teach our kids.
It's actually even applicable to adults. Like something I learned later on in life, like a few years ago, was to like give your fear a name.
Yeah.
So I have like an actual name. So like I'm like a big Harry Potter fan. Okay?
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And I call like whenever I'm like fearful or anxious like that, like about just like an outcome that's like not materialized yet, I call it Umbridge because she was like the worst character.
That's
and
so funny.
I'm like, oh no, this is just Umbridge showing up again.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like it's really helped.
Yeah, because it really just like makes you realize like not to attach to the feeling too much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not just for kids.
Yes.
Okay. Do you find it challenging, or did you find it challenging to make the transition from being an actor to a brand founder?
I actually don't. I don't know. Like I think that I was kind of like in a situation where obviously the pandemic happened. I was not acting and I was developing this line. And I think that, you know, for me, I haven't had the time to do any acting jobs because obviously as a founder, this takes up like most of my life. So it's like, you know, and I am involved in like everything down to invitations to influencers or, you know, like I am involved in every aspect of this business. So for me, I just felt like I think people are still learning that I'm a founder in what I do and still learning that I am the founder of Being Frenshe. And I love that. And I think that it's something for me, I've just really have obviously committed to 100% over the last couple years. And so, I don't know, like I would say that it just hasn't been a struggle just because it hasn't been like an option. Like there wasn't like a time where I was like, do I choose an acting job versus this? I mean, I just really have, this has just been a part of like, I guess it's just something that once I started and once I like really got into it, I just felt like I was doing something that was more meaningful. You know, as an actor, I'm like acting out someone else's lines and someone else's vision, and it's fun. Like I said, I've done it for a long time, and I'm sure I'll do something, you know, when I get really super inspired to do it. But I think that I feel what I'm doing with Being Frenshe and Frenshe is a bit more meaningful.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Okay, last question. What has been a favorite experience you've had when you were an actor?
My favorite experience. There's so many experiences and like awesome experiences I've been through as an actor. I feel like, I don't know if I could pick just one. I mean, everything is always like very different with each project that you do. I feel like probably my favorite experience is really like weirdly, I would be acting in something that felt like I didn't go to college, and yet I did a show called Hellcats that was about competitive cheerleading, and I felt like being in Vancouver and all of us being there, I felt like that was my college experience. Like I've almost lived life through my projects, even though I haven't been able to experience, like I did experience high school. So High School Musical was like, I felt like I was going back to high school for a second time. But even like those three movies, like it was like the first movie, all of us had our parents there with us. And the second movie, we're all like, we got this. Like, we can do this. We are learning how to wash our clothes. Like, we felt like we were also in a college experience. So it's just like, it's so interesting how your personal life and also your like acting experiences were almost like coinciding at the same time. So it felt like I never really missed out on anything, I guess.
I love that. That's really special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ashley, this has been awesome. Tell everyone where they can find you.
They can find me at Ashley Tisdale on Instagram, and at Frenshe as well. I'm on there too. And yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.